So today, we're jumping into a fantastic legal mystery right out of the Talmud. And it all spins around what seems like a really simple question. When can we eat the new spring harvest? You'd think that would be straightforward, right? But the answer, well, it's a story that covers 2,000 years of history, a world-changing catastrophe, and some of the most brilliant legal thinking you'll ever come across. Let's get right into it. And at the absolute heart of our case is this one verse from Leviticus. On the surface, it seems to lay down a pretty clear rule. Don't eat the new grain until you've brought a special offering. But, and this is the key, the entire mystery is hidden right there in the phrasing. Every single word matters. As we're going to see, two short phrases in this one sentence, they spark a debate that lasts for centuries. All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to follow the clues to solve this thing. We'll start with that simple question, then we'll see how the system worked perfectly until history threw this massive curveball. From there, we'll decode the key piece of evidence, that single verse, and finally, we'll see how this ancient argument actually shaped the daily lives of people for generations. Okay, so let's try to put ourselves in the shoes of an ancient farmer. You've just harvested this beautiful new crop of barley, and the question on your mind is simple. When can I finally eat the stuff? Well, the answer, as we're about to find out, is anything but simple. You see, this isn't just some farming technicality. It's a really deep question about how a law can possibly adapt when the entire world it was built for just vanishes. The answer pivots on one single massive historical event: the existence and then the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. So to really get a handle on the problem, we first need to see what the solution looks like. Let's go back in time to an era when the rules were clear, the system worked like clockwork. We're talking about the era of the Second Temple. So you've basically got two core scenarios here. With the temple standing, you had a crystal clear signal, the Omer offering. This was a specific barley offering brought on the 16th of Nisan. As soon as that sacrifice was made, it was like a starting gun went off, and boom, the new grain was permitted for everyone. But without the temple, that starting gun is gone. So what happens now? The Mishnah, which is a foundational text of Jewish law, lays out the original rules very, very clearly. If you live near Jerusalem, you just waited for the offering. Easy. But what if you lived, way out in the countryside and couldn't get real-time updates? Well, the law had this really elegant, practical solution for that. So why midday? Why was that the cutoff for people living far away? It was just pure pragmatism and trust. The Mishnah explains that everyone knew the court that oversaw the temple service was diligent. They weren't going to be lazy about it. So by noon, you could be absolutely positive the offering was done and you were clear to eat. It's a beautiful example of law adapting to logistics. But then, in the year 70 CE, everything changed. The temple was destroyed by the Romans, and the entire system of sacrifices, including that critical Omer offering, just stopped. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a full-blown legal crisis. In the middle of all this chaos, a leading sage, Rabban Yoḥanan ben Zakkai, had to figure out what to do. So he issues this landmark decree. Without a temple, the new grain is now forbidden for the entire 16th day of Nisan. Everybody has to wait until the 17th. Now, this wasn't a minor tweak. It looked like it was fundamentally changing the original rule. And this question right here, this is the absolute core of our mystery. What was Rabban Yoḥanan ben Zakkai really doing? Was he inventing a new rabbinic law to fit a new, broken reality? Or was he uncovering a deeper meaning inside that original Torah verse that was there all along, just waiting for this exact historical moment to be revealed? To answer that question, we have to go back to our main piece of evidence. We have to see how the greatest minds in the Talmud took it apart word by word, piece by piece. So look at the verse again. The rabbis saw two distinct conditions here. First, until this self-same day, that's about time. Second, until you have brought the offering, that's about an action. So how do these two things relate to each other? Are they separate rules for separate times, or are they two parts of one single rule? The answer to that question splits the whole debate wide open. Okay, so this led to two major schools of thought. The first camp, represented by the sages Rav and Shmuel, argued the verse is basically talking about two different eras. Until the offering was for the temple period, until this day was for our time, after the destruction. So in their view, without a temple, you can eat at dawn. But another camp, led by Rabban Yoḥanan and Reish Lakish, they totally disagreed. They argued the grain was always technically permitted at dawn. The offering was just the ideal way to do the mitzvah, a higher standard, but not the absolute trigger. So here's the crucial question. Is the verse split by history, as one side suggests, or is it split by obligation? The difference between the bare minimum and the ideal way to do it. This fundamental disagreement is what fuels the entire legal drama. It's everything. Okay, so if the law, according to some of the greatest authorities out there, was that without the temple you could eat at dawn, then why in the world did Rabban Yoḥanan ben Zakkai forbid it for the whole day? Well, the Talmud reveals his reasoning, and honestly, it's just a stunning piece of legal foresight. He was worried about the future. He was playing four-dimensional chess. He pictured this exact scenario. For years, maybe decades, maybe longer, people get used to the new normal. No temple, so we eat at dawn on the 16th. Then, one day, miraculously, the temple is rebuilt. The old rules snap right back into place. But people, just acting out of habit, will eat at dawn, totally forgetting they now have to wait for the offering. His decree was a firewall, built to protect a future generation from accidentally making a mistake. And here is where the Talmud offers this incredible resolution to our mystery. It turns out Rabban Yoḥanan wasn't just inventing a new rule. He was actually making a definitive ruling, siding with an earlier opinion from a sage named Rabbi Yehuda. See, Rabbi Yehuda had argued all along that the phrase "until this selfsame day" literally means the entire day. So the decree wasn't a new invention, it was an interpretation, a declaration that the Torah law itself, in a time without a temple, was to wait the full day. And this totally redefines what it means that he instituted the rule. He didn't create it out of thin air. He acted like a judge. He looked at the existing legal opinions, he chose the one he felt was correct, Rabbi Yehuda's, and then he instituted it as public policy, making sure everyone knew how to act in this new world. He wasn't a legislator, he was a clarifier. But listen, this was not just some theoretical debate locked away in an academy. For centuries, these different opinions led to different practices on the ground. You could literally tell which legal opinion a rabbi held just by watching when he ate his first meal from the new harvest. The Talmud gives us this fascinating snapshot of this in action. You had one sage, Rav Papa, who would eat on the evening of the 16th, right after the day was over. But a different group, from Rav Ashi's academy, they waited until the next morning, just to be extra safe. And then there was one sage who took the strictest approach of all, waiting all the way until the evening of the 17th, a full 24 hours later than the first opinion. So why the different practices? Why weren't they all on the same page? It all came down to how you answered two key questions. First, is the prohibition today biblical or rabbinic? Because that changes how strict you have to be. And second, how much do you worry about calendar mistakes? You gotta remember, in the ancient world, being off by a day was a real possibility. Your answers to those two questions determined exactly when you ate. And so, our journey is complete. We started with what seems like a simple rule about when to eat grain, and it just unfolded into this incredible centuries-long conversation about how to read a text, how to respond to historical trauma, and how to keep a legal system alive and relevant in a world its founders could never have possibly imagined. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? The lifeblood of a legal tradition, it's not found in having fixed, unchanging answers. It's in the enduring power of its questions. A law stays alive, not by being followed blindly, but by being constantly challenged and reinterpreted and debated with passion and with brilliance. And that's the real story of the forbidden grain.